This section's about a little extra home security. What I've done is taken a piece of bar stock that's 1.5 inches wide and 3/16 thick. I've drilled staggered holes in it because of the wood grain. You never know exactly how the wood grain will split, and took the holes clear down to the bottom. And the reason I did this was years ago, this striker plate, I seen a house where somebody kicked it in, and all that happened was this wood broke out. It's very weak in here. It splintered it up here and here, but this strip is meant to stop that ability to break through this weak point here. At 3/16 thick metal, they're going to have to really get some different burglar equipment than just a pry bar and a flashlight. They may have to get a sawzall and a drill and everything else to get in this house after we get this done. But the deadbolt will go into this hole here, and you can see how these are about every 6 inches. I put anchor screws in. These are going to be 2.5 to 3 inches into the wood, and right now I've got just a few of them holding it while I try to find my location for my deadbolt. And how I found that was I painted this whole area white and let it dry. Then I painted the end of my deadbolt here black. And while it was still wet, I closed the door and I brought it out 2-3 times, pressed on that white background, and I found exactly where that deadbolt is going to go. So when I get this to cut out and file it down, I won't be wasting any time with anything. I've scribed the lines at the perimeters, and I'll drill that out, and then I'll file the corners out. Probably take another 20 thousandths up and down, and because this compresses back here a little bit, I'm going to leave that edge right there so that the door closes tight against here, and maybe take another 20 thousandths off the back side. But anyway, I shouldn't be wasting any time by finding my location of the deadbolt hole that way. The tools that I used to complete this job weren't too many. I used a plane because I wanted to keep my 3/16 thickness on my metal, and I planed down the edge of this door here so it would fit in there. My other doors had plenty of room where I didn't need to plane anything off, but this one I did, so I planed off a little bit of the wood so that it fit better. But you need digital calipers, the paint markers, a file for your filing out your final hole, a drill 64ths bigger than your screw to put your holes in, a countersink, and here's the screws I'm going to use. Again, I like the deck screws with the star driver in it. This was handy because this door used to have only a regular handle on it because there's a deadbolt on this one. But I thought we'd just do a little extra security. So where the handle was, I put the deadbolt in, and I drilled and put a handle in here just to open and close it. Otherwise you wouldn't have anything to grip on this thing to open it and to close it. So this doesn't even have a striker that comes out. No need for it, because once you're closed and you're inside, you'll have the deadbolt gone. Company comes, you just undo the deadbolt, pull it open. But I can't see a need for 2 strikers in here. With this deadbolt going into that system, that is going to be extra secure. But this is a handy jig I bought at Lowe's that goes over the door and guides you where you put your holes in, and if you want to put a striker in, you use that. Pretty handy little piece here. Hole saw came with it to cut and put the new handle in. Need a tape measure, and again, first thing you want to do is measure your height. I'd leave it about 1/8 inch shorter to make sure that the cutter doesn't screw it up and you have to do anything. Then you drill your holes. I put 14 holes in this board, and then you countersink it so your screw heads are flush or below the board there. Let me see. Now to find what kind of width that you're going to need and what you could use. You might have to go down to 30 thousandths, but you close your door. And I took a piece of tapered shim stock and I went between the door and the crack to see what would fit. And I got up to 3/16 on most everywhere except for a little section here that I planed off so I could use the 3/16. It may be that you can only use 30 thousandths or a 32nd. It may be that you need a 16th at 60 thousandths. Might be room enough for an 1/8 inch. On all my doors I had room for 3/16. But you want to get a feeler gauge in of some sort, and then you use your digital caliper to measure where your thickness is. And unless you want a plane, you want to go to your narrowest spot up and down the door that you find. So that's how to determine how thick a plate to put in there, or galvanized sheet metal. You go to your sheet metal shop and they'll cut you what you need for everything. And then after we get this hole in for the deadbolt, you will be able to anchor these down permanently. Well, before you anchor them down and you get your hole in, then you would paint this, in this case either a black or a dark brown. You can't see what it is once it's in this crevice. And on my white doors I painted it white. So that's about the process. Not a lot to it, but I think it adds one heck of a lot of security, especially after I saw how that one house had this weak spot where all they did was kick the door in and it splintered this out. Couldn't have taken them any more than 5 seconds to get in the house. This house, you're going to have time, once you hear the banging and the carrying on going on, you'll have time to casually call 911, take the trigger lock off your gun, or get your ice pick or your machete, whatever you feel handy with in self-defense, and possibly even put a cup of coffee on till they get in here, because it's going to be a battle for them with a deadbolt here and into this metal. They're not going to find their usual easy crack out here. So I did this to 3 of my entry doors, and I guarantee you the thief that comes here, he is going to have his problems. Now if he breaks the glass and right here and tries to get in through the handle, well, all I can say is about the time the hand comes here, he's either going to have an ice pick in his hand or a machete across his fingers, or in the worst case a bullet hole in his hand. He probably might have to find a different line of work after whatever he does to go through this window and get his hand down here. He's going to pay a price for it. But it's going to take him a minute or two to realize he ain't getting through without breaking the glass. So you'll have plenty of time to get your ice pick or your trigger lock off, and once that hand comes through, you can handle things then. So that's what I'm doing to the doors for security, and I think it's a good idea. I tell my wife that if I die, I want this to be set up to where she feels secure in here. We used to have a electronic unit here, security unit, and really that doesn't do anything when somebody's breaking your door down, except let the police know 5 miles away, 10 miles away, to have the sheriff send somebody out. Well, that doesn't stop somebody from coming in your house and intruding. This will keep them from getting in the house. And so I'm going to go ahead and proceed, button this up, and then I'll show you the results after I got everything together. I'll just show you the first part of the job, where I took a black paint marker and laid out the staggered holes that I'm going to cut in here. Also marked where I think the deadbolt and the regular door handle striker will come out on. And I'll take that down to the barn and drill the 16th or 64th over holes for my 3/16 bolts, which will be 13/64, I believe. I want to show you something here. if you look real good, you'll see a big burr right here where the guy at the sheet metal shop cut that and gave it to me. When I was an apprentice, the first thing you learned was when you cut your bar stock, whether it's on the bandsaw or a cutoff wheel, they had a belt sander right next to it. And the first thing you were taught to do was get rid of these burrs. If you were on a bigger job and took 8 hours to finish and you had a follow-up guy came, chances are if you left burrs on there that he could cut his hand on or his fingers on, the next day when he came in, the first thing he would do is go over to you, and if he was nice, he would tell you about getting those burrs off. If he wasn't a nice guy, he'd just kick you in the butt and say, "What the heck are you leaving me crap like that for?" So this is plainly evident that the sheet metal guy was an average person that runs a shop and probably lucky enough to inherit the business from his father, because he really don't have the machining background to know that the first thing you do is get rid of those burrs. So a comment, if you happen to have a sheet metal shop cut your metal and you go home and you got those burrs on, you know you just got it off of a kind of a second class operation, because that's the first thing you do is get rid of them burrs. On bigger bar stocks, you'd have to, if it was on a chain hoist, you'd have to file it off. On smaller handheld things, you went to the belt sander and the first thing you did was get rid of burrs. So that's a little comment on the piece of metal, the layout of it. And my wife just did something last night. This slipper came apart on me a little bit on the bottom, and I says, "Well, doggone it, I really like those." Well, this morning I woke up and she did some slipper repair with some nice color coordinated duct tape. I think I can get another year out of that. So even my wife is starting to get this little, well, I can fix that attitude. So it's getting to be a very nice teamwork cooperative group, my wife and I. Show you how I'm starting this little job. I'm at the workbench in the barn, and I took a center drill and just started a little hole with the center drill. You could take a center punch and a hammer if you want to do it, but I found the center drill just leaves a nice little dimple in there where your drill will start. 64th over drill to drill the holes through. Countersink to put it in. A little bit of a carbide grinder. If the countersink doesn't work real good, just swish around and complete your countersink. But just a few moments, this should be done and ready. Well, my 14 holes are all drilled. I always put a little piece of board underneath here so I don't drill into my workbench too much. And I would believe an 1/8 inch thick piece of stock. I use 3/16 on the other door, and 1/8 inch is considerably easier, and I think it will be just as strong and just as resistant to a burglar as a 3/16. So I would recommend an 1/8 inch thick piece of stock, about as thick as you want to go, I believe. A lot less work. These drilled through real quick and easily. So now I'll go ahead and get my countersink, and we'll see how the countersink goes here. Countersink holes went real slick. I always take an extra screw and kind of test to make sure it is below the surface and everything looks good. Only took a few minutes to put the countersinks in. The piece over, and I quickly hit things with the countersink on the other side to get rid of any burrs that the drill or the countersink from the other side, and I got a nice smooth burr-free surface there. Cut these holes out here is I put center drill marks on the corners, and then I'll take a drill and drill through those. And then I'll see in between the gaps, and I will take a center drill and mark where I think I need to cut. So I have very thin walls between the holes, and I just take a little chisel and knock those out. So this is how I start. After I get the corners in, I put center drill marks in between the holes that's existing, get them centered pretty good, then I'll drill those out. They should have very weak walls, and just punch them out. And then I will take this carbide grinder, and I will go around and clean up the ridges, and works pretty good. You can see the hole pattern now where I've got all my drills drilled through, and you'll see the weak walls in between them everywhere. And this is the chisel that I will go and just knock those walls out and turn it over and knock them off, and just take one punch and pop her out. And then I will use my carbide not knurling tool, but a carbide grinder kind of, and smooth them edges out. But that's how I go about it. Hope this is complete and ready for the first test. I'll put it on with the same 3 bolts and see if the deadbolt and the regular door handle striker goes through. All the holes are countersunk. I highly recommend, if you have a friend that has a Bridgeport that you borrow, let him cut these, or if you're good enough, go ahead and use the Bridgeport, and you can have a lot of time savings if you have a Bridgeport. Other than that, you can just do like I do, and you can make it work. The holes aren't perfect, but I'm hoping they go right in and they work. And this edge here, they'll never bust it out, even on a 1/4 inch. They'll never bust this one out on an 1/8 inch thick, not 1/4 inch. But these are pretty strong pieces with 14 3-inch screws in it. I don't think they'll ever get through this. Door is complete. We've got the 3/16 inch wide reinforcement piece of metal in here. We've got the hole for the deadbolt. No longer do we have that weak spot in here where they just kick it in and this all rips out and they can't get in 5 seconds. It's going to take them a good minute or two, if not 5-10 minutes, to get that deadbolt to move here. 14 3.5 inch screws supporting that into the wall, and it will be very difficult to get into this door. Again, this handle here is just strictly to open and close it. There's no striker here. The deadbolt here is here. Works very nice. The weak spot now is here. If they break in, I just give them a poke with this. It takes a little courage, but like they teach in the seminars, all of a sudden it's you against them. Nice little small machete here. You get a firm grip on. You can just slice through a few tendons on their fingers, and you've got the protection you need, the time you need to make a 911 call, the time you need to unlock your gun if you got one, the time to get yourself ready for them. And this door is 100% better, if not 200, 300, 400, 500% stronger and better than what it was with just the plain striker plate. Going out to the patio is probably the one they would go after, since it's in the back of the house and nobody can see them from the front. Again, we've got a deadbolt in here. This has got a handle with a striker comes out, and this is a 1/8 inch bar with 14 3.5 inch screws holding it on. 2 holes, one for the deadbolt, one for the regular door handle striker. Works very good. Everything is smooth, and it will take them quite an effort to break through here and get in. And again, you'll have time once you hear the rattling and the babbling going on to calmly call 911, and also to get yourself whatever you need to see fit, whether it's a home protection device such as a gun, ice pick, or a machete, and be able to kind of defend yourself. Most of them don't carry guns, and I don't ever expect to be broken into. But I do know that this is, again, 1,000 times stronger than what that little striker plate in this wood frame is. This will never be busted out easily. It may take them a few minutes, but we've really increased the security in our house with this strip. Every door has a 3/16 inch wide. Again, I believe an 1/8 inch wide would be plenty of metal that prevent any sort of break-in here. 14 staggered screws, so it's connected on any kind of wood grain that moves in and out, whatever. But each one of them is staggered to make sure it has a good grip into the metal. 3.5 inch screws go in and basically had full contact and full draw. And this door is 1,000 times stronger than the old one that just had this weak little striker plate that could be easily kicked in and all this shattered out. You're not going to kick this in here unless you're really work. And I would imagine it can't be broken into. So this door is secure, 1,000 times more than what it was. This is the garage to the kitchen entry door where we carry our groceries and go in inside and out. And we painted this 3/16 inch wide strip white, and it looks good. You can see the screws going 3.5 inch in. We've only got one deadbolt here. That's going to be our safety feature on this door. We've got the handles that you can open and close it, and the deadbolt we use at night. During the day we don't engage it, but when we go to bed at night we engage it. And again, I would say almost unimpregnable, if that's a correct word to use as far as somebody's ability to get into this door. 3.5 inches into the woodwork here, and it seemed like all the way in they were hitting something. It wasn't like they went through a 1/2 inch of wood and then it went on. These had good connections and pulled tight all the way. I don't think you can break in this door anymore. So that's the garage to the kitchen. Now I want to show you something on this door and our other doors. This piece of plastic here, the seal, is magnetized, and you can see by this piece of metal that I put on there how it just kind of clings to it and pulls it in. All of our doors have this on, and whoever came up with this product, I hope they're a wealthy man, because this is one heck of a good idea they came up with. And you can see when I close the door that it just pulls right up against it and seals it. I wanted to test how well sealed my doors were, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. I finally did, though. We took our leaf blower and had my wife outside and put it at the high volume, and I went along on the inside and felt what came through, and it was a good seal. I've got a weak spot right in that corner where I've got a piece of weather strip. The magnetic plastic didn't come all the way down, about I'd say 7/8 of an inch from coming all the way down, but I put a better piece of weather strip in there because I found out where the door seal was. So if you want to check your door seals and see where you got a draft coming through, you can, instead of putting a throw pillow in front of it, you can do something on the bottom. On our $1 million renovation at the building that we're doing, I saw they had thresholds, had about 3/8 high lip, anchored down here, about 1/8 of an inch away from the door, and then the weather stripping that would collapse. And after I seen their doors up there, on the test in the patio door, it was a little weak on the bottom, and our front door entry was a little weak where it blew in air and I could feel it. So I am going to find the building supply company that sells that little strip, and I'll be about maybe 1/8 of an inch from the door. I will put it down, then I'll put some nice weather stripping down inside so the door collapses on it and seals it up. So using an air blower is a good way to find how to seal it. So but this plastic strip here is really nice. In fact, when we were working on this, we didn't have a striker into the side. We used to have a regular door handle was in this position, and I took it out and put the deadbolt into to the striker plate there, and I took and drilled this new handle just for opening and closing. It has no striker on it. But as we were working and in and out of the house, it was so nice just to touch that door and open it. Now, if I had my hands full of tools, I didn't have to put tools down, turn the handle and go in. I just gave it a kind of a little tap, not much, and it would open. So my wife said, well, why don't you make it so it's like that all the time? So what I did was made it like that. The magnetic strip holds this in place, and my wife was a little concerned if there's a 30-mile-an-hour gust of wind came through and the windows were open and the air pressure was weak inside and this door could possibly force open. So I said, I think I can figure out how to stop that. So here's something that's very unique, is I took a 5/8 wood drill in, I took a 5/8 compression spring, and I took a 5/8 ball bearing, and I ground that out so the ball bearing was about maybe 45% sticking out here and trapped by the metal on the inside. Then I thought, well, let's see how we can trap that ball bearing on here. Well, I took the striker plate and put it on the door itself. Usually you never see it on the door, you'll see it on the wood frame. And engineered it so when that ball comes in, it hits this little spot here and traps it. And now when we go outside, with the right touch, you don't even have to handle the handle, and it closes and it holds itself, and I don't think any wind's going to open that up. And so this is extremely nice for coming in and out of the house. No need to have a striker plate in there. I got arthritic fingers and turning a knob is bad. And the other thing with arthritic fingers is this deadbolt is much easier to lock than this little thing on here. Now this deadbolt got a big grip on it, and your arthritic fingers don't have any problem taking it in and out. Now this little thing here, if you're hurting, that's kind of a pain in the butt to lock, and your striker plates are really weak there too. So here's kind of an idea if a guy wants to get real adventurous and his wife's got 3 and 4 bags of groceries, or if you got 2 handfuls of tools and you have to put one down to open the door, I no longer have to do that. If I got my hands full of tools, both hands, I just go into the house with a little tap and it opens. The magnetic strip and the ball plunger really holds it in place, and I don't think the wind's ever going to blow that open. You can see how the magnetic part and the ball screw engaging keeps that up against that nice magnetic strip there. So that's this door is probably unique in the world of doors. I would say that if I had to ever build a house, I'd make this entry door just that way, so you don't have to put your bag of groceries down and come in, turn the handle and come in. You just put a shoulder on it and just nudge it a little bit and that door comes open. Now I want to show you the seal. I'm going to turn everything off in here and leave the lights on out there, and you'll see that as I close that, there's no light coming through anywhere on those magnetic strips, and the strip back here, you can't see any down here, even in that corner where the wind, I could feel just a slight wind coming through that corner. But you see how nice it seals and everything. And so this is a unique door, very secure now with the 3/16 inch wide bar here. They're never going to break that out if they ever come in here. And you have the security of the deadbolt engaging at night when we're sleeping. I also want to talk about, I did a patent search on this. I have 40 pages of things of how to make your door more secure. I found 2 patents that was similar to this long strip. Can't get out. And other than that, they had all kinds of concoctions on the striker plate itself. But the 2 patents had a dual plate instead of one single wide. And the one had 5 bolts screws that held it in. One had 10 that held it in, but this one's got 14. So I think the security in this house on the entry doors are just about complete, and this little plunger ball bearing has really made our life easy coming inside and out of our house. It's trapped in there, and you can pretty well eventually just get used to closing the door a certain way and it's going to close and seal very good. You can't see any light come through them cracks. So that's the last door of our entries I wanted to show you. I wanted to be at night so that you could see the light, any possibility of light coming through. About the weakest place to get in the house now is this patio doors. This I tested for if there was metal in there with magnet, and it never stuck anywhere, so I believe this is strictly plastic here. Very simple design of a barrier bar here. Galvanized steel pipe. I put a 1/2 inch rod in the middle to give it some more reinforcement, and got a female connector here that screws onto this, and I've got a cap that screws onto a male connector that goes into here, and I've got it set to where as you tighten this up, it will not allow any lateral movement or any dislodging. We found the center line of our frame stud back here. And we mark it with a pencil right here, and we drill in, and if we go through and it's nothing but drywall, you'll know it. So move over 1/4 inch and drill in. If you hit the stud, you'll know it. It's metal or it's wood. And you come over here on this side and you drill till you find where the edge of the stud is. Then that will be able to find your middle of that stud back there. I wanted it to be above the deadbolt lock. I wanted it to be visible to the outside to maybe discourage them if they see this bar across there. And that's about 42 inches high. So I come down and I mark with a pencil 42 inches high here. Same with down here, 42 inches high. Make it level across there. Find my stud. Again, take a stud finder, mark it, and then drill until you can find exactly where your center line of your frame stud is here. You'll do the same over here. You've marked the height, and once you find your stud, you will drill until you know where that stud is. Now you'll have to spackle and repaint, which you can see here. This has been maybe 3-4 holes was in here, spackled, painted. Doesn't look bad at all after you get it finished up. So you will screw your eye bolts into that stud, 3.5 inches thick. This is a 3/8 eye bolt. The female connector and the cap traps it in here. This has had about a little bit more than 1 inches diameter in here. And when you screw this eye bolt in, you can do it by hand about 3 turns, and you'll take a screwdriver and rotate it all the way in, and it went in very well. But this is super anchored well into the frame stud. This is super anchored well into the frame stud. And this is a cap here that came with the galvanized pipe. After I cut it off to length and put the rod in, I just put the cap back on, and it kind of contains the rod inside. And the 1/2 inch male connector here contains the rod on this side. The reason it's a 1/2 inch galvanized steel piece is not that the inside of this is 1/2 inch, it's that your connectors on the inside is 1/2 inch diameter. That's where the 1/2 inch designation of the rod goes. But you can see it's a very easily manipulated thing. I've got the camera in one hand, and I'll show you just how easy disassembly is. You just take this off, screw your cap back on, and you will place it very easily in a position where it's out of the way and all you see is your eye bolts here. We don't use that every night when we go to bed. Now if we went away for a day, 2 weeks, it takes 15 seconds to put it on, and it pretty well will not allow anybody to break through on these doors. They will have one heck of a time. So that's how we handled the patio door back here. A very simple construction, but a very strong construction. So that's what we did on the back patio doors, and if we go away, they're going to have a heck of a time getting in this door. So that's the back patio doors. Now sliding doors, patio doors, yeah, I'd have to deal with it before I could figure out exactly how to really make that a vigorous, tough spot for somebody to get in. But since I don't have one here, I can't figure anything out to make it extremely difficult for somebody trying to break in the house. Again, all you're looking for is some time to make a calm call, 911, maybe organize your self-defense. Every seminar I've been to about intruders, you basically cannot talk to them. You cannot, you just basically have to go on the attack. You run away if you can. First thing, get out, get out. But if you can't get out in your trap, your best chance of surviving is go head to head, any means that you have, and disable the person. So that's what they teach in the seminars. Again, we're just looking for a little extra safety here. The odds of it happening to us, extremely low. I hope I don't look paranoid by putting this presentation on door entries in, but it's something that especially if a lady or a woman's home alone, yeah, I think it'll make them sleep better knowing that it's extremely difficult to get into this house.